I finally got my hands on the Fuji X100VI, one of the most popular cameras of 2024. For the past 2 years, I've been shooting with its predecessor, the X100V. And if you've had the privilege of shooting with any X100 cameras, I'm sure you've fallen in love with them as much as I have. I've been shooting with this camera for about a week now, and I've got a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings about this camera. I chose to get the black version of this camera, but there's also a silver version available as well. This is a crop sensor camera with a 23mm f2.0 lens on it, which is equivalent to 35mm in full frame. The camera also shoots photos that are a whopping 40.2 megapixels. I'm usually not a fan of cameras with large megapixels, but we'll talk more about this later. At first glance, this camera looks identical to the previous model on the outside. I do believe this camera is slightly lighter by 43 grams. It's very, very slight. I can't feel the difference. On the front of the camera, there's a red line on the toggle that has been removed. The tilt screen on the camera tilts slightly more, and the quarter 20 hole has moved just a little bit. There's a new Bluetooth badge on the back of the camera, and the memory card gets inserted the opposite way, which I think is an interesting change. Other than that, everything on the outside of this camera feels pretty much the same. No new buttons, same viewfinder, same LCD screen, same ports, same flash, same lens. This is great because it means all of my past accessories with my X100V should fit on the new 6. I'm going to be adding a thumb grip to the top of this and my short stash Polar Pro filter, which I love using on this camera. Speaking of filters, there is something I wish that was changed on this camera, and that's the way that you attach filters to the lens on this. And because the way that this camera is set up, you need to get this separate attachment to attach any sort of filters to the lens. And by doing this, it makes the front of the camera a little bit larger, and you can't add a lens cap when a filter is attached. There's kind of a workaround to this. You can thread the filter that you want on the camera on backwards, but when the camera tries to focus, you get a focus error because there is this little piece of the lens that zooms in and out. So I wish this was resolved somehow, maybe in the next version. I usually love shooting with filters on this camera, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to be using any of those, and I'll let you know if any of these photos have been altered. Otherwise, everything's straight out of camera. The photos from this camera are beautiful. I mean, they always have been, no matter what version of this camera you've had. The only difference now is that the photos are now 40.2 megapixels in size. I'm not typically a fan of large sensors because the files take up so much room, and I probably won't be blowing up the images and won't need the extra resolution. But if I did want to use this in a professional setting and enlarge the images, I would be pretty happy. Now, what I think is great about this camera in particular is that you can customize this control ring to crop into your images and act like a zoom lens. When you do this, the camera is just cropping into the sensor. It's not optically going to look the same as if you were to use a physical zoom lens on this camera. However, I'm using this camera in a really casual, lighthearted way, so if I can frame something in camera and I don't have to crop later, I think this is a fantastic feature. So the majority of the time that I'm shooting with this camera, I am using a film recipe or film simulation or whatever we're calling them, and I'm shooting straight to JPEG and to RAW. And most of the time, I am just using the JPEGs that come from this camera. I don't often touch the RAW photos. Along with the regular film simulations that we're used to on the Fuji cameras, like Classic Chrome and Eterna, there's a new film simulation for the X100VI, and that's Reala Ace. Fuji X Weekly has been such a great resource to find new film recipes to add to your Fuji cameras, and now there's going to be a whole bunch more with the addition of Reala Ace. Reala Ace? Reala Ace. Even without a film recipe, Reala Ace looks pretty great right out of camera, but I'm not seeing much of a difference from the standard profile, but I'm probably also not shooting with the proper light or with the proper tones or colors. I've noticed in the menus where you select your custom settings, there's been a slight change, and now there's an off button. And if you select this, all of the customizations from your picture profiles have been turned off, and you're just shooting in the standard picture profile. There's really not a lot to say about the photo features on this camera. I was pretty happy with how everything worked on the X100V, and the same goes for the X100VI. The combination between a really small camera body and a really great lens and a really great sensor give me images that I'm really happy with. I have seen some people say that the autofocus in photos is significantly better than the past models. I haven't seen that to be the case, but I've only had this camera for a couple of weeks. This camera has been very difficult to get brand new. Retailers are extremely backed up, and people selling it secondhand are charging far more than I'm comfortable paying. I purchased or pre-ordered this camera on February, I think 20th, in the middle of the night, and I actually purchased 3 of them. 1 from a local camera store and 2 from online retailers. I ordered 3 of these cameras, not because I need 3 of them, but because I wanted to put myself in 3 different lines. And I'm glad that I did, because I had no idea it would take this long to get to me. Immediately after I ordered the cameras, all of the retailers sent me updates on how popular the camera was and that they didn't expect it to take so long and that they had no date that they expected to deliver me the camera. Not the news I wanted to hear and not the most helpful updates, if I'm being honest. Not too long ago, one of the online camera stores let me know that my camera would be arriving August 6th, but shortly after that, my local camera store said, your camera's come in, you can come pick it up today, and I'm stoked that I could support my local camera store. In total, I waited about 4 months for this camera, and I have a feeling if I ordered the silver, I would still be waiting. In a small point-and-shoot camera like this, I honestly don't have very high expectations for the video, so if they're any good, I think that's just a bonus. In my limited testing with the video features, I think the video coming out of this thing is really pretty great. It has 6.4K video, 422 10-bit, which honestly is in like every camera, but by having it in a camera like this, I think it's just wild. You can shoot in standard mode and use the film simulations similar to what you would do in photo, or you can use F-Log or F-Log 2. Honestly, I've never really shot much video with Fuji, so I don't know if I should be using F-Log or F-Log 2. And having a built-in ND filter is really awesome, because then I don't need to screw another piece of glass on the front of this. Even some of the more professional cinema cameras that are far more expensive and far larger than this don't have that built in. For my past few years of owning an X100V, I don't think I ever shot video on that camera. The stabilization was horrible. I don't think the picture that came out of it was amazing, but I think the stabilization is a massive upgrade from the last camera. You can definitely handhold this thing and get a couple shots that you're happy with. I'm also a little bit confused why there is not a full-size audio jack on the side of this thing. I don't know what this thing is called, and I assume you just use a dongle to plug in what you need, but let's just get a proper audio jack on the side of this thing. I just stopped using the iPhone app with my X100V. Connecting was confusing and unreliable, and I found that if I wanted photos on the go, I would just bring around a USB dongle and plug in my SD card to that, because I knew that would be reliable and I could get stuff to my phone quickly. Now, with the 6, you just open the app on your phone, you press the Bluetooth button on the back of the camera, you confirm yes, that you want to connect, and you're good to go. The images transfer pretty quickly, and you can choose if you want the RAW image or the JPEG image. The videos that you take on the camera can also be transferred through the app, and this would be great if you want some higher quality footage than your iPhone if you want to share on social media on the go. I noticed that there's this resize toggle at the bottom of the screen, and make sure you have this turned on. With it on, the images you're gonna get on your phone are gonna be about a megabyte or so, and with it off, they're gonna be about 25 megabytes. I can't see a difference between these photos, so just leave this turned on. Another bonus with this app is that you can do remote shooting and live viewing, so you can see what the camera is seeing straight on your phone and even change the settings if you need. I think the price bump between the 6 and the 5 is kind of annoying. I understand a little bit of a price bump, but I feel like I paid $1,800 Canadian for the 5, and I paid $2,200 Canadian for the 6. I feel like that's kind of a lot. As well, I think the wait for this camera is pretty long. 4 months from the time I ordered this till now seems like a long time. Now, if you're a casual shooter and you're primarily using this camera for photos, just for memories, for trips, I think the X100V is an incredible camera, and you should probably stick with that or an older model. Now, if you're a serious shooter or you want the latest and greatest, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with this camera. The updated image stabilization in the photos is incredible, and I've really been enjoying the digital teleconverter feature that lets me crop into my photos while I'm shooting. If one of your requirements in a small camera is having incredible video, then this might be the camera for you. I think this camera is incredible for capturing photos and videos for social media, capturing events with your friends, and for travel. But I also love having the confidence that there are pro features built into this camera, and I could use this thing professionally if I needed to. This past week of using this camera has been so much fun, and I love that Fuji has taken a camera that works incredibly and improved it even more. I have a whole bunch of other Fuji videos on my channel, so consider checking those out. My name's Davey, and thanks for joining me at the Calgary Stampede.